We are now joined by Troy West of allplaywins.com. He's on our show now. How are you doing today, Troy?
Hey, good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really looking forward to this MLB All-Star Week coming up ahead of us. You obviously work for allplaywins.com. I heard you're in Las Vegas this week. What have you heard in Las Vegas as far as betting is concerned?
You know, it's been an interesting week right now in baseball with a lot of these teams. You know, the Anaheim Angels are starting to surge a little bit. The Dodgers are obviously playing really good baseball right now. So, you know, some of these high-market teams are starting to become of value where at the start of the season, a lot of people were losing their wallets on them. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here going into the All-Star break and after the All-Star break.
Now, going to the Home Run Derby contest, you have Chris Davis, the league leader in home runs, 34 right there. You have Prince Fielder, the reigning Home Run Derby champion. You have youngsters like Bryce Harper in the competition. Who is your favorite to win a Home Run Derby contest?
You know, right now I'm going to roll with David Wright of the Mets, and it's kind of a sleeper. I like the value and the odds that he's getting. David Wright, he's comfortable there. It's his home ballpark. He's going to have the fan support. He's got his favorite guy throwing for him. So I'm going to roll David Wright as a sleeper. And then I think the favorite right now is no doubt is Chris Davis, and I think Chris Davis is going to make a good showing there. But, you know, he's the heavy favorite in this one. So I'm going to roll David Wright as a sleeper. And I also think Carlos Gonzalez of the Rockies is going to have a pretty good showing there. He's been kind of under the radar all year and always seems to perform well when he gets into these home run derbies. So David Wright, Carlos Gonzalez are kind of my sleepers right now.
Carlos Gonzalez actually had to withdraw from the competition because he has a sprained middle finger, so they replaced him with Pedro Alvarez.
Interesting. I did not know. I did not hear that, but I would not. Pedro Alvarez would not be a guy that I'm going to roll with in the home run derby. I think little to no experience going into a game like that. I think, you know, the All-Star game brings a different dynamic to these guys and brings a little bit different of a swing. So I think Wright's got the experience. He's been there a few times, and I like the fact that he's at home. So let's roll with David Wright.
And then last year, obviously, you remember Robinson Cano in Kansas City getting booed because he didn't put, I believe it was Billy Butler, in the home run derby competition. This year, it's going to be in New York, obviously. How do you feel Robinson Cano is going to do?
You know, I think it'll be interesting for Cano. He's kind of had an up and down year. He's been pretty inconsistent. I don't think he's going to make a very good showing this year. His focus this year has been more or less away from the home run swing, so I think him to make a quick change in this home run derby, like I said earlier, it's a different swing than what these guys are used to going into the regular season throughout. So I think Cano's going to struggle a bit this year. He's not going to be a guy that I'm going to be putting a whole lot of money down on.
And then looking at the All-Star game the day after, you're going to have, obviously, Miguel Cabrera, players like Chris Davis, all on the AL. You have to figure the AL is probably going to win this All-Star game. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's going to be interesting because I think the NL's got some solid pitching with Matt Harvey, who's going to get some innings in his own ballpark. Adam Wainwright's been pitching really well. It's going to be interesting to see how those two guys go at it. And, you know, I just think the AL, you obviously you've got your Verlander, you got your Felix Hernandez. They've got good pitching as well, but I think it's, you know, the NL's got the better pitching going into this game. I definitely think the AL's got the better bat. It'll be interesting to see if the NL can get a little streak of their own going this year, but interesting ball game. I'm going to roll with the sleeper with the NL just because I think they've got better pitching going into this game.
And then obviously we've seen in some years where there's a lot of runs scored, in other years there's no runs scored. What are your thoughts on the over-under for this game?
It's going to be an interesting over-under. I'm going to roll with the over just based on the fact that I think both these managers are going to fly through the pitching staffs of these teams. I don't think anybody's going to get more than 2 innings, where in years past you sometimes see a starter go into 3-4 innings. I think they've gotten away from that at this point in the year, so I think you're going to see 9-10 different pitchers for both teams, and I think it's going to go over this year.
And then obviously looking at the rest of the second half of the season for baseball, you currently have the St. Louis Cardinals as the best team in the NL, the Boston Red Sox the best team in the AL. Who are your favorites to go to the World Series?
You know, I'm still thinking there's going to be some sleepers that sneak up in this. I think the Nationals are going to be a team that can sneak up. The way Jordan Zimmerman's pitching, Gio Gonzalez is pitching well. I think Strasburg is going to have a better second half of the year. I think the Washington Nationals are going to make a third, and if they get into the playoff, that's a team that I would not want to be messing with. I also think the Detroit Tigers are going to be the team that gets in from the AL. I just think with Justin Verlander starting to pitch well, Fister has been struggling as of late, but I think he gets it back together. Sanchez is obviously pitching well. I just think their lineup is deep. They do got to get some bullpen help. I'd like to think it's going to be interesting to see what kind of help they get at the All-Star break and afterwards at the trade deadline to see if they bolt up that bullpen. Because if they don't, I don't think they're a huge favorite. But I don't think Boston has enough pitching, and I don't think they have enough firepower in that lineup to get to the World Series this year.
Now, you mentioned how you thought the Nationals were going to make the wild card spot there in the NL. Currently, it would be the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Cincinnati Reds going in the wild card spot. Which team do you see falling out of the race?
I think the Cincinnati Reds will. I just think the Cincinnati Reds don't have enough deep pitching. I think they've got some guys, obviously Homer Bailey pitching well right now. Latos and Leak are pitching okay, but in Arroyo, but they're just not consistent enough, I think, to get in that spot. I think Pittsburgh right now has got the young pitching. Garrett Cole's pitching phenomenal right now. Jeff Locke's pitching great. You got Charlie Morton starting to come back. I think once he gets a few more starts under his belt, he'll be in better shape. And I just think the Pittsburgh Pirates are a team with a high energy. Clint Hurdle's got them playing good ball. I think the Pirates are going to sneak in and continue to play good baseball and grab that spot.
At the beginning of our show, you mentioned how you thought the Dodgers had really turned the corner. How far do you see them going in the postseason? Obviously, currently they're 2 games back, I believe, in the NL West.
I think the Dodgers are going to get that division. I also think they're going to make a run. I think right now it's the way Clayton Kershaw's pitching. Ryu's pitching phenomenal. Their lineup right now is what's really clicking. You look at Hanley Ramirez and what he's done. We all know what Puig's done. This is a built lineup right now that's clicking at the right time, and their pitching and their bullpen, everything's clicking. Mattingly's finally got them playing good baseball. So I think the Dodgers can make a serious push to the World Series. It'll be interesting to see if all that money pays off, but right now they're playing as good as anybody.
All right, now I want to switch sports over to the NBA. You have the Houston Rockets with that huge splash bringing in Dwight Howard. They already had James Harden there. They have Omer Asik, who apparently doesn't want to be there, but they're going to stick with him anyway. You don't know who the point guard is going to be, Patrick Beverley, Jeremy Lin. What are your thoughts on the Houston Rockets for this season?
You know, I think the Houston Rockets are going to be the biggest question mark going into the season because I was so disappointed to see the way Dwight Howard played last year. And could we possibly get that again this year? It would be interesting to see if that team can actually coexist. Right now, I see them at 9-1 here out in Las Vegas to win the NBA title. I think that's decent odds. You're getting the Heat at 2-1, but you know the Houston Rockets to me are just too much of a question mark to be hyping up like they are right now because we don't know if Dwight Howard's the real deal. We know he was in Orlando, but he showed a completely different character in LA. And I'm just, the James Harden's obviously the real deal, but, like you said, questions at the point guard position. It'll be interesting to see if the coach can get them rolling and if they're going to be the real deal this year. But right now, I think they're a question mark.
And then I want to go to Golden State because they were another team that was favored to go after Dwight Howard. They didn't get him, but they got Andre Iguodala. Potentially, Harrison Barnes is going to come off the bench. How far do you see Golden State going this year after finishing in the 6th seed this year?
Golden State, I'm looking at them right now, they're 16-1, which I think is a great value. But again, I don't know if they have too many guards. Now you got Klay Thompson, you obviously got Curry, and now you got Iguodala. Who's going to be, is Andrew Bogut and David Lee going to be healthy at the post play and provide enough rebounds and enough dominance down low to keep these guys open out on the perimeter? I like what they're doing. I like what Mark Jackson's doing. I think another year under his belt will give the Golden State a huge push. But, right now I just don't know, too many guards right now in that lineup and not enough dominant post play to make a serious push. But I definitely think they'll be back where they were last year.
And then you have 3 other teams who've been really busy in the Western Conference. The Los Angeles Clippers acquiring some players in Jared Dudley, J.J. Redick. You had the Minnesota Timberwolves getting Kevin Martin and Corey Brewer. And you have the New Orleans Pelicans who get Tyreek Evans. What do you see shaping up for those teams?
I don't think any of those teams will make a serious push to win the Western Conference. I think they'll all sneak into the playoffs. But, the Clippers, to me, I was extremely disappointed with how they finished off against the Memphis Grizzlies. I just don't think that team's the real deal. They're starting to age a little bit more. I'm not believing in them. And also the Pelicans, I just don't going on over there. They're 100-1 right now. I think they could sneak into the playoffs, but I don't see them winning a series. And as you said, with the Minnesota Timberwolves, I'm just not falling for them either. They made some good moves, but Kevin Martin really had no impact on that OKC team. And who knows now with playing with Rubio and Corey Brewer and all them as the Timberwolves, I'm not sure that they're going to make a serious push either. So staying away from the Timberwolves, I think they could sneak into the playoffs with the Pelicans, but I don't think they're going to be winning any sort of playoff series, even with the moves they've made.
And then the big move I want to talk about is with the Brooklyn Nets, bringing in Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Jason Terry. They're a much different team now on paper. Currently, I would have to say they're the best starting 5. But as you mentioned with Vegas odds, the Heat are 2-1 favorites. Where do you have the Brooklyn Nets?
They're 14-1 right now, which I think is going to be really interesting, is how can the Brooklyn Nets function with the coach like Jason Kidd? I think he's the big question mark other than Garnett Pierce. I think you know what you're going to get out of them. You got Deron Williams. You know what you're going to get from him. Joe Johnson's phenomenal. But Jason Kidd, first-year coach, can he really take all these veterans and really make a strong push? I think that's going to be one of the biggest headlines of the NBA season this year. Could he do what Mark Jackson did, where he kind of comes out, he did a couple of years of commentating and goes right into coaching? I think that's going to be interesting. Will these players respect Kidd? Will they listen to Kidd, or is he going to be too much of a pushover for these guys? I think that's the biggest question mark going into the Nets season.
And you have other teams like the Indiana Pacers who also get upgrades. You have Danny Granger coming back to the Indiana Pacers. They also add C.J. Watson. They sign Chris Copeland. You have the Chicago Bulls who bring in have Derrick Rose coming back. They bring in Mike Dunleavy. Where do you see the Miami Heat finishing this year? Will it be a three-peat?
I don't think it's going to be a three-peat. I think the Heat now with Dwayne Wade getting another year under his belt, his knees obviously aren't the same. You can hardly see that guy dunk the basketball anymore. Chris Bosh, to me, starting to wear on me a little bit, and people are catching on to him. Sitting out on the perimeter, they're forcing him to shoot jump shots. So I think this year the Heat, I think their luck runs out. I think there's too much firepower. Like you said, the Chicago Bulls, if Derrick Rose comes healthy with that lineup and the way they play and the toughness that they bring, I think the Bulls can make a serious push to win it. Pacers, like you said, real tough, played the Heat tough last year, and I think they'll give them another push this year. So I think there's 3-4 teams. We haven't even brought up the New York Knicks, adding Bagnarni. I think they could make a push. Lots of teams after the Heat this year, so 2-1 taking the Heat, I don't think there's any value there.
All right, and then I just want to ask you one more question with the NBA. Cleveland Cavaliers, they signed Andrew Bynum, Earl Clark, Jarrett Jack. They've had first-round picks over the last few years. How seriously do you take them, and will they make the playoffs?
I think they do make the playoffs. I think they can be a 7-8 seed this year after year after year. A team right around 500 or even below 500 this year with the Milwaukee. I think the Cavaliers can sneak in there. If Kyrie Irving gets healthy and they start playing good basketball, I think they're a year or two away from making a serious push and winning a series. But, it'll be interesting to see how the draft pick pans out, too. That, flustered a lot of people. We'll see how that pans out. But I think they're in the right direction, and I think they've got enough firepower to make the playoffs. I don't think they'll win a series this year, but I'd like to see them sneak in at the 7 or 8 spot this year.
All right, and let's switch over to the NFL before we let you go. Obviously, the New England Patriots are undergoing some changes. Obviously, with Aaron Hernandez gone, there's question marks about Rob Gronkowski being healthy for the season. Alex Dennard got in trouble with a DUI yesterday. Where do you have the Patriots finishing this year?
All sorts of stuff going on over in New England. I think Tom Brady eventually will get them together, and Belichick's obviously the best coach in football. I think they'll have all the pieces to the puzzle going into the season, but I don't think they're a Super Bowl team this year. I think they get to the playoffs. I just think there's too many teams in the AFC that can knock them out, with the Denver Broncos, Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Baltimore will still be okay. The Bengals are going to be good, I think, still in there. So I see the Patriots getting there, possibly winning a game, but I don't see them being serious Super Bowl contenders that they have been in the past. Too much stuff going on, and I don't think Tom Brady has the targets that he needs to win a playoff game this year.
I mean, you have the Buffalo Bills with a brand new head coach. They have a new quarterback with Kevin Kolb or E.J. Manuel. You have the Miami Dolphins with all their changes. Do you see either Buffalo or Miami pushing for that division this year?
I don't think they'll make a serious push for the division. I can't buy the Buffalo Bills with E.J. Manuel as their quarterback. I think the rookie in him, and I just don't think he has enough accuracy in that arm and enough targets to make a serious push with that offense. I don't think they're a serious contender. I think the Miami Dolphins are a little bit more serious with some of the moves they've made, but neither of those teams, I believe, have the quarterback to really get them into the playoffs and make a push in the playoffs. So I don't think they're a serious contender for that division, but I don't think New England's going to make it tough for anybody either.
Then you have the Baltimore Ravens, who have to deal with Ed Reed being gone. Ray Lewis retires. They make a whole bunch of moves. They have a revamped roster now. Do you see them possibly repeating this season, or do you think it's going to go?
I don't think the Ravens are going to repeat. I think the Ravens will struggle to actually make the playoffs this year. Right now, they're 28-1 to win the Super Bowl, which is pretty astonishing considering they won it last year. But I think last year was one of those things where everything seemed to be clicking at the right time. But as you said, way too many losses, not enough gains. I think the Ravens are going to struggle this year. They're going to be right around that 8-8 mark. And if that's good enough to get in, it's good enough to get in, but I don't think they're a serious contender for the Super Bowl this year.
And then you mentioned before, obviously, you like Denver's chances. Houston added a wide receiver in the first round this year, going with DeAndre Hopkins to pair him up with Andre Johnson. Do you see it being Denver or Houston representing the AFC?
If Peyton Manning can stay healthy, I'm going to roll with the Denver Broncos. I just think adding Wes Welker to that lineup with Peyton Manning, the way he had those receivers clicking last year, and he really didn't have fantastic targets last year. I think another year with that offensive line. I think the Denver Broncos are the favorite in the AFC, but how many times have we seen the favorite not make it? I do think the Texans will make a strong push, but to me, you do have to go with the Denver Broncos. I think they just have too much firepower not to go with them.
And in the NFC, obviously, the San Francisco 49ers were the team that represented the NFC in the Super Bowl last year. Michael Crabtree gets injured, but they add Anquan Bolden. They lose Randy Moss, though. Do you think it's going to be the 49ers who represents the NFC, or a team like Seattle could sneak up on them?
I'm a little bit biased because I'm from Seattle, but I do think the Seahawks are a much better team than the 49ers this year. If you look at the Niners, like you said, losing Crabtree, that's a huge deal, especially for a young quarterback like Kaepernick to not have one of his main targets. You know, you look at some of the stuff that's going on right now in the clubhouse. They've got arrests going on, fights among the team. It'll be interesting to see if they can flush all that. But I just don't think with the absence of Crabtree, and Bolden's old, and I think he's another year under his belt, a new quarterback. You know, he played with Flacco a few years, so they had a little bit of chemistry going. Can him and Kaepernick really get it going? I don't know. I don't think they're the true favorite. The reason I like Seattle is you look at the moves they've made on the defensive side of the ball. They had Percy Harvin. They had another running back in the draft, so they got a strong running game. Another year with Russell Wilson. I think the Seahawks are the true favorite in the NFC. And I also like teams like Atlanta and Green Bay to still be around, but Seattle's my favorite at 9-1 to win the Super Bowl in the NFC.
And one of the most curious teams to me is the New Orleans Saints, is because they didn't have Sean Payton last year because of Bounty Gate. Now they get him back. Does it make any difference for the Saints this year?
I think it will make a difference for them. I think they'll be a playoff contender this year, but I don't think the Saints have enough guys on the defensive side of the ball, and I don't think they have a strong enough running game to be serious contenders and be considered for the Super Bowl. Right now they're 18-1. I just don't. I'm not going to be laying any money on the Saints to make a push, but I do think Sean Payton obviously will impact that team in a positive way. I think that a lot of those guys coming back and playing under him will be fired up. I think they'll make the playoffs, but definitely not a serious contender to win the Super Bowl.
And then the NFC East is always a really competitive division. All four teams. Who do you see emerging from the leader of the pack?
I'm going to roll with the Dallas Cowboys. I think the Dallas Cowboys, what they did in the draft's big. I think Des Bryant, Miles Austin, that offense, Jason Witten. I think another year under Tony Romo. Some of the changes they've made, obviously, on defense with Monty Kiffin coming in, Callahan coming in on offense. It'll be interesting to see with these veteran coordinators, will they get Dallas an extra win or two to actually get in the playoffs? I think so. So I'm going to roll with the Cowboys. I don't think the Giants, the Eagles haven't. Eagles are going to be, I think, it'd take a year or two to get under Chip Kelly's system, so I'm not going to roll with them. I think the Giants are aging. I don't think they have enough power. I think it's going to be between the Cowboys and the Redskins. I think the Cowboys prevail this year.
All right, I'm talking to Troy West of allplayswins.com. Just tell our listeners a little bit more about your website.
You know, allplayswin.com now has been going strong for 6 years. We're a one-stop shop. We cover all sports, from the MMA to golf to football, basketball, you name it. We work with about 18 different guys. We represent 10 different states. You can call our phone line 24/7. You're going to get a representative. We're very flexible with our pricing. I encourage listeners to come out and take a look. Our phone number is 702-721-WINS, allplayswin.com. Like I said, we do big things over here. We're very consistent. We're good people. I encourage people to come take it's a good thing.
All right, Troy, thank you for taking your trip out of Las Vegas to call in to our show and give us some predictions.
You got it. St. Louis Cardinals and Anaheim Angels are 2 games we're on today. So if anyone's listening, those are the games we're on today, and appreciate being on the show.
All right, thank you so much.
Talk to you soon. Thank you.